You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
USDT processed $95 billion in B2B payments, capturing 92% of the market. Let that land.
Yeah, it's just a staggering amount of capital, right? Moving entirely outside the traditional banking rails.
Completely outside.
Exactly. The sheer volume fundamentally rewrites how we have to, think about global financial infrastructure.
You are listening to Vocal Technologist, where we untangle the plumbing of the internet. And that massive statistic is exactly why we need to have a proper look at what is actually happening behind the screens. Because if you still reckon this whole crypto thing is just humans gambling on digital pictures of monkeys, you are missing the biggest structural shift in modern tech.
Oh, without a doubt.
The human speculation side is stepping aside. And these automated agent economies, along with massive institutional back-end plumbing, they're taking over.
Yeah, that structural transition is the most crucial piece of the puzzle. We are moving away from this highly visible, highly volatile retail casino, right?
Okay.
And we're migrating into this invisible layer of machine-to-machine infrastructure. And to really understand how these machines and, traditional Wall Street firms are rewiring the entire system, we basically have to follow the traffic.
Well, because the internet as we know it is literally breaking under the weight of artificial intelligence. I mean, bot traffic has crossed 50% of all web traffic.
Yep, more than half.
Which completely destroys the traditional business model of the internet, because the internet relies on a very simple trade. You give me free content and I look at your ads. But a bot does not look at a banner ad. A bot does not buy the sneakers that follow it around the web.
No, it definitely doesn't. The old referral-based revenue model is entirely collapsing. If you look at the raw numbers, the contrast is just stark.
How bad is it?
Well, when a traditional search engine like Google crawls a website, it generates maybe 5-page crawls per referral. It's just quietly indexing the text so humans can find it later.
Right, sure.
But an AI, like Claudebot, for example, generates nearly 24,000 page crawls per referral.
24,000. Wow.
Yeah, it is actively rendering the page, extracting the data, reading the context, and then using it for training or real-time answers.
Think about what that means for you as a listener, right? If you run a favorite recipe blog or a local news site, you are bleeding server costs to host all this traffic. But the AI company is hoovering up all the value without passing a single cent back to you.
Exactly.
That is completely unsustainable. These bots, they need a way to pay for what they are taking, but a human cannot sit there typing in a credit card number for every single micro interaction.
No, which forces a massive shift in network architecture. So companies like Cloudflare have launched something called the Monetization Gateway, and AWS, they've integrated the BY402 protocol right at the edge of their networks.
I want to get into the guts of this protocol bit, because anyone who has used the internet knows that a 404 error means page not found, right? We've all seen that.
Yeah, everyone knows 404.
That 402 is this old, mostly forgotten internet error code that stands for payment required.
Right. It was actually built into the original framework of the web, but it was never really utilized because we never had a native internet currency.
But now we do.
Now we do. So here is how the mechanics actually work. The gateway intercepts the AI agent's request to read a website.
Oh.
Instead of giving the data away for free, the server returns that HTTP 402 error. But attached to that error is a microscopic price tag and a digital wallet address.
So the AI agent knocks on the door, gets handed an invoice, and then what?
The agent automatically reads the 402 code, sends a micropayment, usually in a stablecoin like USDC, to that specific address, and immediately gets a cryptographic proof of payment back.
Just like that.
Yep. It hands that proof to the gateway verifies the math, and lets the request through to the server. And all of this happens in milliseconds.
It is like building vending machines for AI. You don't invoice a vending machine, right? You just drop in a coin. And stablecoins are the coins?
That analogy holds up perfectly, yeah. Because the transaction is entirely mechanical and trustless.
Yeah.
And we are seeing this exact behavior in the wild right now. There's this great example called BankerBot.
Oh, yeah, I saw this.
It's wild. An anonymous developer deployed a fully monetized lottery API using a single natural language tweet directed at an AI agent.
Just one tweet?
One tweet. The agent understood the instructions, built the software endpoint, set it to charge 5 USDC per request, and gated it with that BY402 protocol. Zero traditional code written by a human.
That is insane. Just a tweet.
Just a tweet. And major players like Meta and AWS are shifting to these agent-to-agent stablecoin micropayments for a very simple reason. They settle in under 500 milliseconds.
Right.
There are no account creations, no HR departments to process payroll, no invoicing delays, and no banking holidays.
We are essentially moving from human firms to automated tasks. Like, if an AI agent can break down a complex problem, hire 3 other sub-agents to solve the individual pieces, and pay them instantly in digital dollars, well, you don't need a traditional company structure for that. You just have a global, programmable labor market.
Yeah, it basically proves an old economic theory. Companies essentially only exist because organizing humans and processing payments is incredibly expensive and messy.
So true.
But if AI agents can organize themselves for practically zero cost using stablecoins, the traditional corporate structure kind of dissolves.
Which brings us to the quiet part nobody is saying out loud. If millions of AI bots are suddenly slinging billions in digital dollars around the internet, it is no shock that traditional finance is quietly trying to capture the underlying yield of all those parked dollars. Wall Street always wants its cut.
Oh, they are aggressively positioning for it. I mean, consider JPMorgan Chase. Through their blockchain division, Connexes, they just launched a $700 million USDC-denominated vault.
700 million.
Yeah. That vault takes those digital dollars and allocates them into U.S. Treasury bills and overnight repos. That initial launch size alone makes JPMorgan the 5th largest vault curator in this entire space.
See, this is where they're just having a lend of us. I genuinely have to laugh. You have Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JPMorgan, continually going on television and calling crypto dodgy.
Right.
Saying it is terrible, it has no utility, it's just criminals. Meanwhile, his own bank is building massive back-end vaults to hoard the yield generated by the exact same technology.
The public rhetoric almost never matches the private infrastructure investments. It's fascinating. The traditional financial world understands that stablecoins are essentially sitting on mountains of real-world cash.
Of course they do.
If they can hold the U.S. Treasuries backing those stablecoins, they collect a risk-free 5% yield on billions of dollars. And it is a global trend. In Germany, the massive Sparkassen savings bank network, they are rolling out native crypto trading directly in their banking apps for everyday retail customers. Yeah, and Gemini is pushing 0% commission stock trading to basically become a full financial super app.
It is completely hypocritical, but, I mean, brilliant business. They bash the tech on television to keep regulators happy, while quietly wiring it into their own balance sheets to capture the profits. And if you are keen to keep picking apart these massive tech shifts with us, check a subscribe on whatever app you're listening on right now.
Yeah, the institutional adoption is undeniable at this point, but it creates a massive structural problem that the industry is basically racing to solve.
Right, because if Wall Street and millions of AI agents are migrating all of their operations and payments on-chain, the current underlying network infrastructure is going to completely buckle under the weight. It is simply not built for that kind of global high-frequency scale yet.
No, not at all. That is the looming disaster scenario. The infrastructure has to get incredibly lean very quickly. And this brings us to Vitalik Buterin's Lean Ethereum roadmap.
Right, I've heard a bit about this.
The primary goal is to aggressively shrink the computational burden of running the network.
Yeah.
Right? So that it can actually handle this impending flood of machine traffic.
I am curious about the mechanics of this, actually. How lean do they actually need to get?
Well, the engineering target is to cut the state required per validator down to just 6 bytes.
6 bytes?
Yeah, 6 bytes.
Wait, before we get to the 6 bytes, we should probably clarify what state actually is for anyone who isn't, a network engineer.
Sure, yeah. State is essentially the massive, ever-growing digital ledger. It is the real-time record of every single account balance, every smart contract, and every piece of data stored on the network.
Okay.
And currently, for a computer to help validate the network, it has to store and constantly update this massive database.
So how on earth do you shrink an entire global ledger down to 6 bytes? That sounds literally impossible.
They achieve it by utilizing something called recursive Stark proofs.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that.
Right, well, a Stark is an advanced type of cryptographic proof.
I'm going to need an analogy here, mate, because cryptographic proofs usually put people straight to sleep.
Fair enough. Think of it like paying a restaurant bill. When you leave the restaurant, you do not need to carry out the dirty plates, the chef's recipe, and the raw ingredients to prove to the world that you ate a meal and paid for it.
Right, that would be ridiculous.
Exactly. You just carry a small, cryptographically signed receipt. The receipt mathematically guarantees that all the complex cooking and eating happened correctly without you needing to store the mess.
Oh, I see. So instead of the network forcing every computer to store all the heavy transaction data constantly, validators just push the heavy lifting off the main chain. They generate a tiny receipt, a Stark proof, once a day that mathematically guarantees their math checks out.
That is exactly how it functions, yeah. By removing public keys from the consensus state entirely and replacing them with these proofs, the target is to support 100 terabytes of scalable state by 2030.
100 terabytes.
Yep. All while making privacy a first-class design constraint.
Well, pushing the heavy lifting off the main chain makes total sense for scaling. But what about the fees? Because if activity's going up with all these bots, shouldn't the bidding war for block space go up too? I would expect network fees to be skyrocketing, but they seem strangely flat.
Yeah, that's because the internal fee structure is fundamentally changing. Priority fees, which are the extra tips users pay to get their transactions processed faster, they've actually remained flat at around $500 million a year, despite network activity rising significantly.
So where's the money going? I am going to throw a theory out there. Are the applications keeping the money for themselves?
They are. The applications are internalizing what we call MEV.
MEV, which is essentially digital front running, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is like a hidden poll booth where the people who organize the order of the transactions take a tiny profitable cut of the trades.
Precisely. Wallets like MetaMask and decentralized exchanges are running their own internal auctions for order flow before the transaction ever hits the public network.
Right.
They capture that hidden toll booth value themselves. This structural shift means the real future revenue driver for the base layer of the internet isn't going to be priority tips.
It'll be base fees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is going to be driven by sheer volume of base fees. Millions of machine transactions per second at fractions of a cent.
Volume over margins.
Yes.
But there is a massive spanner in the works here. We can talk about Stark proofs and scaling and AI vending machines all day, but none of it matters if the underlying cryptography gets cracked.
The quantum computing threat. Yes.
Okay.
This is no longer just a theoretical exercise for academic papers.
It's getting real.
Very real. Coinbase recently formed a quantum advisory council because the migration away from the current cryptographic standard, which is known as ECDSA, is now considered an urgent priority.
We need to suss out exactly what is at risk here, because this is wild. It is not just about upgrading passwords to be a bit more secure, right? It is about the money that physically cannot be upgraded. Specifically, the original wallets belonging to Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous creator of Bitcoin. There is an estimated 1 million Bitcoin sitting in those original wallets, completely dormant.
Yep.
Plus, there is this fascinating lawsuit happening in New York right now where legal teams are trying to claim 3.7 million dormant Bitcoin, which is worth over $230 billion, by the way, under state lost property statutes.
Right, and those early wallets use an older form of public key exposure. The math protecting them is incredibly strong against traditional computers. We know that.
Sure.
But if a sufficiently powerful quantum computer comes online, it could theoretically reverse engineer and derive the private keys from those exposed public addresses before the network has a chance to migrate the funds to quantum-safe encryption.
That is terrifying. If a quantum hacker cracks Satoshi's wallet and dumps 1 million Bitcoin on the open market, it would trigger a catastrophic supply shock. I mean, the psychology of the market would break, the price would completely crater.
It would be devastating, which leaves the network developers with a very difficult, very permanent governance decision. The Advisory Council is currently debating several options to handle these vulnerable dormant wallets.
Okay, what are the options?
Well, one option is to simply let it happen and force the market to absorb the shock.
Ouch.
Yeah. Another option is to burn the coins outright at a protocol level so nobody can ever use them.
Just destroy them.
Basically. And a third option is to implement a strict protocol deadline and forcibly freeze those dormant wallets so they cannot be extracted by a quantum computer.
Hold on, freezing a wallet? That feels incredibly dodgy. That is the exact opposite of the whole permissionless ethos of crypto. I mean, the entire point of the system is that nobody, no bank, no government, no developer council can freeze your money.
I agree.
If the network can just vote to lock up Satoshi's funds, that feels a bit ordinary. It completely shatters the social contract of the system.
It really does. It creates a massive ideological friction point. It places the purity of a permissionless system in direct conflict with harsh economic reality.
Yeah.
Because preserving the permissionless ethos means allowing a $230 billion quantum heist that collapses the global market, Well, the community has to decide which principle they're willing to sacrifice.
That is a brutal trade-off. And honestly, the tension of losing all that value to quantum hackers ties perfectly into how the founders building this technology are trying to protect their own real-world wealth today.
Right.
Because there is a massive disconnect between what is pitched to the public and how the founders structure their own bank accounts.
Yeah, you are looking at the underlying tension between tokens and equity.
Exactly. We see all these decentralized protocols launching flashy tokens, marketing them to everyday people. But behind closed doors, the founders and the venture capitalists secretly prefer to hold traditional equity in the underlying company. So why the double standard?
It essentially comes down to the required return framework, which is just a technical way of measuring risk versus reward.
Okay.
Equity is a known legal entity. It has established property rights, legal protections, and a guaranteed claim on the cash flow of a business.
It's safe.
It's safe. Because it is legally safe, the market generally prices equity with a 9 to 10% hurdle rate. But tokens operate in a legal gray area. Tokens carry regulatory risk, governance risk, and smart contract risk.
Heaps of risk.
Heaps of it. Because of that added danger, the market demands a much higher return, around 15%.
Right. So if I'm a tech founder and my protocol is actually generating real revenue from users, I absolutely want that revenue flowing into my legally binding equity holding. I do not want it flowing into a vulnerable smart contract token.
Exactly. The math strongly encourages founders to capture the real cash flow through equity. The tokens, unfortunately, are often treated as branded marketing tools. They're distributed to retail investors to create liquidity and hype, but they hold very weak, non-binding claims on the actual underlying business. The broader market prices this reality in, which is why you see highly profitable protocols trading at massive discounts compared to their actual revenue.
It is incredibly cynical, isn't it? They dump the dodgy tokens on retail while hoarding the legally binding equity for themselves. But there is a counterexample that completely surprised me when I was looking through the data. It is known as the ANSEM model.
Ah, yes. The trustless influencer model. It is a fascinating structural experiment in aligning human behavior using code.
So ANSM is a meme coin on the Solana network. An anonymous developer minted it, spent a few grand to set it up, and then just handed 65% of the entire supply to a massive crypto influencer named Ansem.
Just gave it to him.
Didn't even ask him, just dropped it in his digital app.
And in almost every other scenario in this industry, the influencer would immediately sell the tokens, take the millions in cash, and walk away.
A classic rug pull. But he didn't dump it. He took command of the coin. And here is where it gets brilliant. He co-founded a cryptocurrency trading terminal called BullpenFi. Then he started routing the creator fees generated by his actual trading platform directly back to the people holding the meme coin.
He essentially put his entire community on payroll, using the token as the distribution mechanism.
Right. And because he holds a massive portion of the token supply and he controls the trading venue where the rewards are generated, he has aligned the incentives perfectly.
Yep.
If he betrays the token holders, if he decides to steal the funds or rug the community, he mathematically destroys the credibility of his own trading platform. The financial cost of betraying his community is actually higher than the cost of just running a legitimate, profitable business.
It is a meme coin, functioning as a structurally sound business model, entirely secured by mutually assured destruction.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is.
And it points to this broader, really optimistic concept of the gambling surplus, because humans love to speculate. We are going to gamble regardless of the medium.
Always have, always will.
Right, but the traditional system extracts a massive toll on that human nature. State lotteries pocket roughly 50% of every dollar wagered by the public. Corporate casinos take a 6 to 9% house edge on table games.
Yeah, all that surplus capital is siphoned away from the players and funneled into state coffers or distributed to corporate shareholders.
But on-chain, the economics are entirely different. Take a speculation platform like bags.fm.
Right, good example.
Instead of a corporate casino taking 9%, the protocol takes a 1% fee. And instead of going to a shareholder yacht fund, that 1% is routed mechanically, permanently, and directly to a public address. That address could fund a developer guild, an open source privacy tool, or a community infrastructure fund.
It completely bypasses human bureaucracy. Traditional public goods funding, even in the crypto space, usually relies on grant committees.
And grant committees are just terrible.
They are. They just substitute the judgment of a few biased curators for actual market signals.
It is raw mechanical capitalism forcing good community behavior. The speculation throws off enormous cash flow, and the protocol just hard codes a pipe that aims that cash flow directly at the people actually building the network. There is no permission needed, no committees arguing over budgets, it just works.
Exactly. When you combine that mechanical, trustless routing of capital with AI agents autonomously executing tasks via stablecoins,
Right.
you start to see the final picture.
Yeah.
The messy, bureaucratic architecture of human organizations is slowly being replaced by autonomous, programmatic rules that settle instantly.
The stake prediction here is simple. The biggest power users of digital dollars aren't going to be humans trading monkey pictures, but AI agents buying data and paying server costs while we sleep. To keep untangling these shifts with us, head over to vocaltechnologist.cyu. Vocal Technologists, see you soon.
Spoken Tech for your ears.